Hi everyone, I'm Ed Helinski. Welcome to the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. On location today, as you see in the background, the remnants of the old Clint Small Stadium here in Tonawanda. Got a great guest for you today, a gentleman who's going to take us down the trip down memory lane, and he's got plenty of them. The one and the only Hap Holway. Bob Hap Holway, thank you so much for inviting us into your home. Good to see you, good to meet you. I can't wait to have you talk about Tonawanda football and Tonawanda baseball memories here on the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. How you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
For people who are not familiar with you, give us a little bit of a background on Hap Holway. Better yet, how did you come up with the nickname Hap?
Oh, I came up with the nickname Hap when I was coaching freshman football. The kids, mainly Ed Slawinski, was the one who coined the name. That I was always smiling and having a good time, even when I made him run laps. And the whole team started calling me Hap, and that's how it became, how I became Hap. In fact, I was speaking at Al Henningham, who's a very good Tonawanda athlete. When he passed away, I was at the funeral, and the priest said, next speaker will be Bob Holloway. And my wife poked me. She said, "Hey, that's you," because I went by Hap for so long that nobody ever calls me Bob anymore.
For people who are not familiar with your background and in the Tonawanda area, talk about that, would you please?
Okay.
Get people up to speed.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong resident of Tonawanda, and I went to Tonawanda High School, obviously, and played 4 years of varsity baseball, and then I taught for 2 years out at Start Point and came back to Tonawanda, and I spent my 40-year, I would quote it as saying, wonderful career at Tonawanda because the kids were just great.
How did you get involved, and when did you get involved with athletics at Tonawanda?
Well, when I first came to Tonawanda, when I was in high school, being shorter than I am now, 5'4" or so, Clint Tussing was in his last year, and they wanted me to become the manager, football manager. So I was the football manager, which in those days, football was something else. When we we ended every practice with a punt, and and Chris Tussing wouldn't have them wear any helmets. And I, as a manager, had a big bottle of iodine that I used to, after the practice, a bunch of them would have cut ears, and I'd swab them with the iodine. And then also in the Clint Small era, I saw my first football game in 1938, and but the game I really remember was the 40 game, because it was played in North Tonawanda, and we were heavy favorites. Jim Oldenburg was our star running back, and he became a big Canadian football runner star too, and he scored the first touchdown over there for a 7-0 lead, because one of the reasons was nobody could catch him because Coach Tussing talked him in to not wearing any pads at all, except a helmet. That's all he wore, and he wore sneakers too instead of cleats, and so that he would run faster than anybody else. Was the reason Tussing did that, and we scored the first touchdown, but that was it, and we lost the game 13-7. The Oldenburg name is still familiar with many Tonawanda people because his grandson is Dr. Todd Oldenburg, who's the superintendent of schools here in Tonawanda now. So
the circle of life, how things come back after generations.
Yeah.
When did you get involved, after you were the manager, when did you become an assistant coach in the program?
Yeah, so when I was the high school manager, kind of Clint and knew that, and then when I came to coach in Tonawanda, the faculty manager of athletics was open, and they gave me the job. Okay, so then Clint would during the football games, he said, "Hey Hap, watch the centers for me." Okay, so and then at the halftime, Clint all the coaches would always ask me, "What do you think of so and so and so forth?" Well, the next year, "Hey Hap, watch the centers and the ends for me." So I was doing more, and then Wacky Witowski was the freshman football coach, and he retired and because he had a practice in North Tonawanda, and so Clint gave me the job as the freshman football coach, and I was coaching with Al Kramer, who was a real good Tonawanda athlete, and he had a heart condition at the time, and he was popping those nitro pills during the practice and everything like that, and unfortunately he passed away. Okay, and his legacy still remains in Tonawanda because he had two twin boys that were good athletes here in Tonawanda, and Kevin is on the Hall of Fame, and also he's on the Hall of Fame at Marriott University in Ohio. It was great. Kids played everything, but Kevin was a really great pitcher. That's how he made his.
When someone talks about Clint Small, or maybe ask you a question about Clint Small, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say that Clint was always very well prepared, and football, baseball were number one with him. That everything that he did, nothing was off the cuff. He was very, very good. No question about that.
Is it safe to say that the teams in the 60s with Rick Cassata and Rick Rowley and were probably the better ones that he coached during his coaching career?
Oh, yeah, they were not only the better ones that he coached during his career, but they were probably the better ones that Tonawanda ever had.
And Larry Bodie was part of that group as well, too.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that '63 team. Was it '63 or '64 maybe? That featured Rick and Larry Bodie. So I'm going to talk quite a bit about that team and those two guys.
You also had some insight about Rick Cassata and why he didn't go to Notre Dame.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you. I'm stuttering a little bit. I'll tell you about that. But that team of those two guys was really, really, really special. Okay, in fact, when we won the TNT, we were undefeated, but we won the NT game, and Alvin Francisco, the band leader at the time, wanted us all. When we got into Tonawanda, he said, I want the band to be in front of you and go slowly up Main Street, which we did do. And when we hit Eddie Fanger's bar, everybody was out on Main Street cheering for us. Some guys opened the back door of the bus, and they threw in cases of beer for all the kids.
What was it like in the Niagara Frontier League back during those days? Good, hard athletics. I've heard it said that it was probably the best football league in New York State.
If it wasn't, it was darn near the best. That was really good football. The two Kenmore teams were good. The Falls was always good. Yeah, NT, of course, you can't forget NT. They're always good. So yeah, it was a great.
What was Quint Small's relationship with George Vetter, or was there a relationship there?
Well, yeah, of course. From what I knew George too, of course, and George was George, and but they got along well. We always got along coaching wise, although we wanted to pound each other, Coach, as people, got along well, I would say.
TNT experience, long rivalry. What was that like way back when? I mean, your first games were in the late 1930s.
Yeah.
Huge crowds,
well, yeah.
Whether in Tonawanda or North Tonawanda. As a boy growing up in Tonawanda, what was that like?
Well, like as I mentioned before, my father took me to a lot of games, and my father was a friend of Chris, and but I remember the Thanksgiving Day games, going to the last one in Tonawanda, and people obviously when you walked in the stadium at Tonawanda, the bleachers on the Main Street side up till about as you walked in and up to about the 30-yard line were covered bleachers until somebody burned them down, not too soon after that. But the Thanksgiving games were really, as a little kid, were a real pleasure because my grandmother didn't live, she lived on Grove Street, and was not, after the football games, it was a nice turkey dinner with the family.
Do you miss having TNT games on Thanksgiving, or is it okay the way it's being played right now, towards the end of October?
Well, like everything else, things change. And in fact, the latest change when John Cicero was the AD at NT and I was at Tonawanda, we changed the time of the NT game to 6:30. And it's still, I'm surprised they're still playing at 6:30, because when John and I got together, we said, hey, kids on both sides of the canal, getting out of school early on TNT game, a lot of time to have a bunch of cocktails, to go to Tops and buy some eggs, and it was getting and so we said, hey, we're going to change that game to 6:30, and the kids won't have all that time to, I hate to say it, but screw things up.
You mentioned John Cassata. He had a great career at North Tonawanda. It was right at that same time as Cassata. Cassata, my understanding, was originally supposed to go to Syracuse. And and didn't go to Syracuse because Syracuse signed Floyd Little.
Well, that could be. I'm not really sure of that, but.
And then you said that Rick Cassata, was supposed to go to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And then ended up going to Syracuse.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned is that Ben Schwartzwalter, the Syracuse coach, and Coach Smith, they ran the same offense.
Yeah, well, first of all, when Clint and we ran the Syracuse offense, period. Okay, and in fact, during their spring practices, our whole staff would go down and be on the field looking at the Syracuse offense.
You made the trip down to Syracuse.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you that. I'll tell you about how Rick ended up in Syracuse. Okay, now Rick's college choice was Notre Dame, and he was highly recruited from Notre Dame because at the time when he was a senior, I was teaching a religious education course at the Cassata House, and that coach from Syracuse would call every single night that I was there. And on his mother's birthday, there would be flowers delivered and everything like that. And he found out that Rick's brother, Joe, was a frosh at UB at the time, and he said, hey, bring your brother with me, and he can be on he can go for the basketball team at Notre Dame. Okay, so that's how they were really going to Notre Dame. And Saturday morning that they were on their way to get the train to Notre Dame, even, Father Joyce called. Now, Father Joyce is still a monitor of athletics at Notre Dame. He said to Mr. Cassata, he was in Rome for a few months ahead of that. He said, I wasn't home, and let me tell you that Joe is welcome to come with Rick, but he's not going to get a scholarship. Okay? So Mr. Cassata was furious. Okay? And he said, well, Rick's not coming if Joe. And then so he immediately called Clint. He said to Clint, what about Syracuse? Because Rick was interested in Syracuse.
So he ended up going to Syracuse at that point, and
yeah.
having a good career. And having a bunch of wonderful people to hand the ball off in his
Yeah.
in his backfield too.
I'll tell you something about that later on. But Clint immediately called Schwartzwalder to see what Schwartzwalder could do. You know, mind you, the practice was just about to start, and Schwartzwalder told him, "Geez, all our scholarships are gone, but let me see what I can do." So it wasn't a few minutes. He called Clint back and said, "I have a wealthy alumni that's guaranteed to pay Rick's total amount." And that's how Rick got to Syracuse.
How did Larry Bodie escape New York State and end up going to Miami?
Well, he always wanted to. There was no question about what he wanted to do, and there was no dickering around with Larry. As soon as he got a scholarship to the Miami University, that was immediate.
Would the same be true for Rick Rowley, who wanted to go to Cornell, and Cornell was going to be it?
Another great Tonawanda football player, obviously, and a great athlete, basketball player. He played baseball for us and everything. And Rick was more of a scholar than most athletes in Tonawanda, and therefore the choice was more. He knew he could play there, but it was the degree that he could get, and what the degree was worth in his future becoming a doctor. That's why he went to.
In all your years of dealing with and being in the company of Tonawanda athletes, do you have maybe a top 5 list of the best athletes that came out of Tonawanda? Or is that an unfair question?
Well, it's a good question, but it would take me a little while, because I want to tell you, I was so fortunate to teach and coach in Tonawanda, because we had so many great, very good athletes, and it's difficult, to say. Of course, Cassata. If I had to say one athlete that was the best, I would say Rick Cassata, because he was not only a recognized great football player, but some people are going to say, "What's the matter with you, Hap? Are you nuts?" I thought he was a better baseball player than he was a football player. And in his he played baseball in his senior year at Syracuse, shortstop, and I know that the Yankees were drafting him pretty high for a shortstop, but they knew that, or they found out that he was really interested in football, and therefore they didn't draft him.
Let me ask you, going back to the TNT games, a long-time rivalry, well over 100 years. Should that game continue?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people ask. There's no question about that either. But I would, that's difficult, and I could see it going both ways. You know, size of the schools now are vastly different, and the last few years we haven't had a very good football team, and therefore, if we were good like we were before, size didn't make any difference. If we were to get better, my answer would change from get rid of it to, yeah, oh boy, it's tradition, you know. So it's a difficult question.
The Tonawanda nickname has got to change from Warriors to something else.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that, Hap?
Well, I thought about that, you know, and I don't know what the kids will decide, but I'm saying, and the name Warrior is really not an Indian name. I looked it up. There's a few colleges that are Warriors, okay, and hey, everybody soldier that fought in the war, they were all warriors. So I think they went a little bit overboard on the Indian thing, but that's the way society is today.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about your high school baseball coaching. What was that ride like, coaching the Tonawanda baseball team for all those years?
Well, everything I did at Tonawanda, including teaching, was great. I couldn't wait to even get to school in the morning, because at that time the kids were really, really good, and fortunate enough for me, of course, when you coached at Tonawanda, you inherited excellent athletes.
Was it because the program was so good because of the athletes, or was it the ongoing tradition that nobody wanted to screw it up, or was there something else?
We were always a very good baseball team, okay? And when I was in high school, that was in from 48 to 51 when I graduated. We were good, and but in those years, you could PG in school, and the football team, of course, would have a lot of PGs, and then as soon as the NT game was done, they'd just leave school. Well, in 51, we had a number of PGs on our baseball team, okay? Because too, when I started in 48, Clint would say, do you ever think of PGing when you're a freshman? And yeah, most all of us said yeah, and therefore we didn't play as freshmen.
You saved that year of eligibility.
Yeah, for it. So 51, which we won the whole ball of wax. We won the AAA baseball championship that year, and it was the last year of PGs, 51, and we had a few on our baseball team, and we all Tonawanda is fortunate, has always had a good baseball program.
Hap, there's been stories with Clint Small. He had a little nuances where we would have a glove in the coach's box and the third base side, and he'd move it around depending on the situation of the game, and that's how he signaled players. and I know you coached at Tonawanda on the JV side, 1961 to 1978. Did you pick up on any of those little tricks, or did you have your own type of signs and tricks that you had with your players?
Yeah, I had my own, but Clint using a glove was, when I played even, that's what he used for forever. And nobody ever picked up on it. I'm talking about the opposition. Nobody picked up on it. Of course, the third baseman would throw his glove off on the side, and in those days, everybody threw their gloves. You didn't bring your glove into the bench with you. No matter what you were in the outfield or the second baseman or what, you threw the glove on the grass. And Clint used the same signals until baseball said you can no longer leave your gloves on the grass. He used it all those years, and I'm pretty sure that there wasn't a team that picked up on it. If Clint was standing in front of the glove, hit and run. If he was sitting or standing behind the glove, it was a steal. And most of the time he'd be, it was very pronounced too, but he'd be very close to the glove.
Do you think the umpires ever picked up on it?
No, I don't think anybody picked up on it. And the only thing they picked up on is Clint's signal if he wanted you to take a pitch. He'd put up his finger and say, one.
Take one.
Take one. And that's, and other than that, everything was mysterious to the other teams.
Did you pattern your JV coaching after him, and or did you have your own style back then, and did it evolve over the years? And so when you took over in '79 as the varsity coach, you were already at full speed.
First of all, I'm a baseball person, okay, and I always watched a lot of baseball and studied baseball, read books on baseball, and when I got the JV job, our field was across from the varsity field up at the stadium, and it was in shambles, you know, our field at Vets, and I took a lot of pride fixing that field up. And I put up we put up a fence. There was just a wire fence around it, and I put up a fence so it looked like a ballpark. And then I measured off distances and put, you know, on right field I put, you know, hedged a little bit. Wasn't quite as long. The hit wasn't quite as long as it said it was on the fence, but the kids, we had they just loved playing. They were all good ball players, like I told you before, but with that little field that we had, JVs playing in an enclosed park, you know, nobody did that, and the kids loved it.
Did you have to ever cut players?
No. I kept them all.
Or dismiss players? How did you handle discipline?
Never had. I can't recall having any problems ever.
How about parents that say my kid should be playing more?
Grain of salt. you know, you know, you'd listen to them, but I never paid any attention to them. I thought to myself, hey, I'm the one that sees those kids every day, you know what I mean? And we worked hard every day, and no, I didn't pay any attention to them. Now, at our practices was no nonsense or no fooling around. Now, we ended the last things we do at practice, I call it 50-50, that every infielder had to take 50 ground balls. That's every day. And how we did this is that the halfway up the first base line, a guy would be hitting to the third baseman. A guy up the line at third would be hitting to the second baseman, and a guy at the plate would be hitting to the shortstop. And we had 3 kids playing first base too, so that the third baseman he knew which one he had to throw to, and so on and so forth. And nobody really does that 50-50. But it was one of the, I thought, made us really good defensively.
You became an associate scout for the Atlanta Braves,
Yeah.
and did that for several years. I got to ask you this. Were some of the kids that you scouted, could they have played for you at Tonawanda?
Oh, well, I looked at a lot of kids, you know what I mean? And the kids that I would look at were really good ball players. And when I coached in the Empire State Games, Empire State Games, the Western New York team went all the way to Syracuse and all the way down to the Pennsylvania border. So I would see a zillion really good kids. And my biggest thing as a scout was that I had Atlanta Braves stationery, and if I knew a kid was really good and wanted to go to college, I would write the college coach. And most college coaches throw those letters away, but when they saw it was on Atlanta Braves stationery, they read them, you know, and got a few kids in schools, you know, which that would, my Atlanta Brave time, that was the best thing I did, you know.
Are today's athletes better than they were 30 years ago?
They can run faster, I think, but I wouldn't say so. Now, especially when you're talking high school kids, you know. Now,
do you like the idea of one sport only, or multi-sport athletes?
I like the multi-sports, which is kind of getting out of style now, you know, because almost every sport now you can practice out of season, you know. I go by the high school now, for example, in the last few weeks, you see kids with football helmets on, you know. And when I was in coaching, that wasn't possible. You had certain dates that you could play, and that was it.
When you drive around and you go by a baseball field and you see it empty, during the course of a day, what goes through your mind?
Here in Tonawanda, I'm extremely sad that kids, a number of kids aren't playing anymore. So that bothers me.
They're not out looking for a game in a different neighborhood or a pickup game at the corner sand lot or up against with the tennis ball up against the school wall, taking pitches and hitting.
I think that's dead and gone. At my house, I would spend hours with a glove throwing it at the garage with a tennis ball, literally hours. Then I'd pitch and pretend it was a game and everything, but that's ancient history. Nobody does that, those things anymore.
We talked about several things during this conversation. What would you like to talk about that I haven't brought up, or maybe you forgot to add some things to it?
Well, I got a couple of things. I got one thing that I think people would like in regard to Syracuse University. This is going to probably surprise a lot of people. Rick was at Syracuse. I think that the 67 Syracuse backfield ranks with the best college backfield ever. Let me tell you why. Rick, of course, was a quarterback. Went on to become a Canadian Grey Cup champion with Ottawa Rough Riders. And here are the running backs. Larry Zonka, Floyd Little, and the wideout, which most people don't think about, was Tom Coughlin. Now, hey, take that what those guys did in football, okay? And that's my all-time college basketball, or college football backfield.
You can't argue with that. That's a fantastic backfield.
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about that we haven't we brought up?
Well, the other thing too about Rick, when I became the AD, I needed a JV football coach, and what the heck, can't get anybody that's decent. So I asked Rick if he would take the job for a year. I said, I really need somebody. Although he was running his popular bar and restaurant at the time, he gracefully accepted, and he coached JV football at Tonawanda for a year.
As a head coach?
JV coach.
As a head JV coach?
Yeah.
How did he do that year?
Oh, I forgot. I was just so happy to have him. I think Bob Hap was the head coach. I think Rick just helped him out, as I recall.
Speaking of coaches, Clint Small was there for quite a long time. Do you think the days of coaches spending 20 and 30 years on the job as head coaches, is that gone and we'll never see that again?
You look around and some guys who are involved with really successful programs, they stay, But nowadays, there's not too many of them. And it's a different world. People have a lot of other things that they want to do, So.
Looking back at your career, would you do anything different?
No. As I told you before, I thoroughly enjoyed my years at Tonawanda High School, both as a coach and as a math teacher. So now, if I had a choice of being a doctor, lawyer, or an Indian chief, again, I'd go right back to Tonawanda High School, because I thoroughly enjoyed my years there.
Have any regrets on how you coach maybe a certain athlete, or you could have done things a little differently with a certain athlete? Or any of those thoughts ever go through your head? You've been retired quite a few years, and sometimes you get a little bit of free time that you can say, geez, if I only did this, and maybe that would have changed.
Yeah. Only once. And I think about it I still think about it fairly often. That's when I was coaching the Empire State Games. I had a pitcher from Fredonia, that left-hander, and geez, I said, I should keep it. I got to keep that kid. But then there was another position, and I didn't. I didn't select the pitcher, and I forgot his name now. But then, a few years later, he pitched for Italy in the Olympics. So I was really happy for the kid, and I said to myself, "You jerk! you let that kid go when he's a senior in high school." That's the only time that I think that I ever had a regret for.
Getting back to baseball, you were very fortunate. In Tonawanda, the program as a whole, a lot of good left-handed pitchers that came up. John Roth, Dave Geisel, Rick Brose, and I'm probably missing several of them.
Frankie Prezioso, he's another one. He's a left-handed pitcher.
Is it safe to say that left-handed pitchers are from different breeds?
Well, here in Tonawanda, they were good ones. That's I don't know if they're different breeds or not, but yeah, they were. But all those guys you mentioned, besides being really good pitchers, were really good guys. Spawny, I still talk to, see fairly often. He finally retired this year from the AD job at Grand Island after all those years. So, no, it was, like I've reiterated many times, it was just a very, very great experience for me.
Speaking of which, you were the athletic director at Tonawanda.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of baseball or football, but Tonawanda had a history of a very good wrestling program, good basketball program as well too, swimming. What was that experience like, being the athletic director and being in charge of all of those different sports?
Well,
both on the male and the female side.
Yeah. The a lot of those guys that you mentioned, or programs that were very, very good, were gone by the time I got to be the athletic director. We looked at any program that the kid got into. We wanted to make it the best possible program for the kids. So girls sports went up pretty good when I was at Tonawanda. In fact, I was NFL's representative at Section 6, and I was the girls' representative for all of Section 6. So, yeah, we tried to, make it as great as we possibly could for them.
Was that a bit challenging? Title IX came in the mid '70s, and during your term as athletic director, what was it like to try to get more girl participation in athletics?
I don't think in Tonawanda we really had a problem. You know.
It was rather easy to get girls involved.
Yeah.
That's a nice problem to have then.
Oh yeah, yeah. So,
When they closed Quint Small Stadium, what was your feeling about that?
well,
Was it time?
yeah, it was definitely time. When I was coaching and stuff like that in the beginning, there was nothing like football games at Clint Small. You know, you had to walk through the crowd, and it was usually always packed, and it was a very, very good place to play, and the field was always in decent shape, you know, and because it was an old quarry, I understand, before it was a football field, and when they filled it up, there was a lot of rocks and stuff like that in there, and the drainage was number one. So it was nice, but then of course, like everything else, time came when you had to, you know, we had to move up here to the new field.
When you walk into the new field and you see the turf, and you see the big stands, and basically a modern facility, even though as we do this today, it's about 10 years old.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind when you walk into this place as opposed to the old Clint Small Stadium?
Well, actually, the time had come, you know, because when the last few years that we were at Clint, like on our JV team, kids had to walk down to Clint for practices and you know, things like that. And now when I go by the new stadium, the use of that facility is really, really nice. You see the lacrosse team, you see the baseball team, you see everybody at one time or another are practicing on that field. Although it's a football field, everybody's using it. So it's the time had come, definitely, for us to move up there. And just egotistically, I threw out the first. I flipped a coin, which I got upstairs here, and I'll show you when you leave. That the first football game played at the new stadium. I think we called heads and won the flip.
Hap, you're a member of the Tonawanda High School Athletic Wall of Fame and a member of several other halls of fame. What do those type of honors mean to you?
I was indeed fortunate to be elected into those halls. That's how I feel about it. And of course, as a coach, going into the Baseball Hall of Fame and the Tonawanda Hall of Fame, you got to remember that it's the kids that played for you that put you in there. You didn't get in there by yourself. You had some really, really great players playing for you.
One final thought. Anything that you'd like to add during this from this conversation?
we talked quite a bit about the '63 team, which I referred to. I believe was the very, very best that Tonawanda ever had. But a lot of old timers, guys that are long gone, used to say the '33 undefeated team, with its 53-0 win over UB Frosh, the old timers really thought that that was the best Tonawanda team that we ever had. But again, I'm sticking. I didn't see those guys, but I'm sticking with the '63 team. And we talked a lot about Larry Bodie and Rick Cassata, but you got to remember that football is 11 guys and not just 2. And that was a great team, led by Bodie and Cassata, but we had a lot of really good football players, because it takes 11 guys.
What pieces of advice would you give to today's athletes?
It's hard to say, because a good athlete is how, even as a kid, how he conducts himself and how hard he wants to work, which still today makes good athletes. But again, being an old timer, it's hard for me to say.
In terms of Tonawanda athletic history, how should Hap Holway be remembered? Or how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I'm remembered on the wall up there, and I still like to. I see a lot of people when I go to Tops and everything like that, and a lot of people still remember me, and I kind of remember them, and that's gratifying, you know. I like to run into people that are still around Tonawanda, that I had good experiences with.
And you're always smiling still.
Pretty much.
Hap Holway, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for inviting me into your home. Thanks so much for sharing your memories and taking us down memory lane.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I appreciate your doing it. Maybe some other time we could talk just strictly baseball.
Fair enough. A good deal.
Okay.
That's a wrap here from Tonawanda. As you can see, I'm now at the new Clint Small Stadium right on the campus of Tonawanda Senior High School. Thanks so much for watching today. Thank you once again to our guest, Bob Hap Holway. Be well, stay well. We'll catch up with you soon.